Hey there, it's Gayle Nowak, creator of Sage Sensation Retreats and founder of The Story Stylist. I know it's been a while since I've done a live here, and I wanted to talk today a little bit about, hey Craig, a little bit about how it's kind of like a before and after story of my business, but also how we're being in business. And what that looks like in the old paradigm and what I'm noticing as we're shifting into this new paradigm. And apologies, my camera might shake a little bit. We're expecting a thunderstorm any minute, so hopefully I can get through this before that happens. Yeah, lightning only strikes like once, right? I don't know, something like that. Anyway, so I was meditating this morning and was really thinking about how I set up my weeks, how I set up my quarters, and how it's so different, and even my days, the details of my days, and how it's so different now than it was, I'd say, like, definitely a lot different than 3 years ago, but even just a year ago. And there's a lot more room for creativity and co-creation with spirit and flow now that I'm noticing, as opposed to before. So before, my typical way of being in business looked very linear. It looked very task-based, lived by lists. It was very routine. It felt very robotic. And I would say going into 2019 and around the spring of 2019, I really started to just feel numb to my business was actually, at that point, was really successful and, had regular revenue coming in. Things were starting to, from the outside, look like success. Or looked like the business was starting to be able to run without me, but that actually wasn't true as far as like the revenue coming in. And I actually felt very numb about the work that I was doing. I really enjoyed the clients I was working with, but something about this, Groundhog Day pattern of figuring out what my tasks were for the day, putting together a list, checking off the list, like it just wasn't, that way of doing things wasn't working for me anymore. And it actually worked really well in my professional career as a journalist in marketing and advertising. We live by the deadline, right? And so I was very much carrying that practice, that energy, that rigidity into my business. And I didn't understand it then, but what I can understand about it now is that was the old way, and that old way worked for me. It worked very well for me in my career, and it worked very well for me in my business. That was several years into my business, and it just wasn't working for me anymore. And so it's a lot easier to see that in 2020 hindsight, but I was kind of freaking out about it. So I began this journey of like, okay, I got to figure out what's this new way that's calling to me. And fast forward to now, and the way that I set up my weeks and even my quarters and even my days is really tuning into the energy first. Today I was sitting down during my meditation and kind of setting the container for this week and meditating upon the energy that I want to be in this week, and using that as a guide versus what do I need to do? What's on my to-do list, right? It's not that I completely ignore that, but it's also really trusting that, number one, everything that really needs to get done is going to get done. And number two, if I'm aligned with the proper energy, all the pieces are going to come into place. So as I was meditating, I also got this guidance of to speak about this, to speak about the before and after of this piece of my business. So I meditate on what's the energy that I want to embody? What's the energy that I want, that I'm available for? What's the energy that I'm not available for? And sort of using that as the parameters and the guidelines for everything that happens within that. The other thing that I've begun to do is think about structuring my day with, yes, the energy, but then also looking at my gifts, my talents, really prioritizing what I do best within the week, and also scheduling the things that need to get done as a focus versus a task. So what I mean by that is on Wednesdays, I very intentionally, this quarter anyway, and I switch this up every quarter, but Wednesdays in this quarter is all about speaking, networking, really tapping into being seen and being heard. Mondays, for example, are all about setting the container for the week, really getting clear on what's the energy that I'm wanting to embody, and then kind of letting Monday unfold however it wants to unfold, right? And so there's some trust in that. I've also this quarter looked at the days of the week and kind of the general themes and how they align with the planets. So for example, Thursday, it's associated with the planet of Jupiter, and that's supposed to be all about luck. And so I try to intentionally schedule sales conversations for that day, right? So there's all kinds of ways for us to think about how we want to be in our business, how we want to show up, what that natural rhythm and flow is for you versus the very rigid 9-to-5 task-based, deadline-oriented structure. It's not the only structure, and I'm not necessarily here to say that it's a bad structure. It's just the one structure that we're most familiar with, and it may or may not work for you. And what I've noticed in my own evolution of my business is that structure did work for me for a time, and this structure just creates a lot more bandwidth for me, some mental space for me. It opens up the flow. It's challenging to me in the sense of it's fairly new, and so it does require a little bit of trust and a little bit of faith that, like, what I need to get done is going to get done. Just because I'm not living by lists and checking off a million things every day, that doesn't mean that what's important doesn't get done. The other thing that I've noticed is that it's a lot easier to co-create with spirit in that kind of a container that leaves room for things to unfold versus really trying to control it and micromanage it and be very linear and rigid. I think that there's a time and a place for that. There's a time and a place for really opening up to possibilities that maybe our mind can't quite imagine and materialize in a more rigid type of container and framework. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that with you, as far as kind of like what it looks like on the inside of being in my business, how it's different the way I manage my time, and it's more about my energy and my focus versus the time so much, and really what the benefits that I've seen by doing that, by making that shift. It just feels lighter. I've noticed that in the beginning, I had a lot of resistance around it, and I was really concerned about getting everything done in time. I'm a lot less stressed about that now. It's a lot easier to sort of navigate when the unexpected shows up as well, because there's more space within the day, by organizing things through a focus, through the energy. So I'm just curious what's coming up for you when you listen to this. I'd love to hear if you do different ways of scheduling things. Like, I have some colleagues, I know they schedule things by moon cycles, or they schedule, they plan their business around annual cycles, right? So I'm just curious to hear if you have different ways of being in your business that look different than the traditional 9 to 5, 52 or 50 weeks a year or whatever, right? How much time do you take off? Do you work 8 hours a day? Do you work a couple of hours here and a couple of hours there? Like, I'm really curious to start the conversation around doing business differently, leading your business differently, and really doing that in a way where intuitively it feels aligned for you. So hope this is helpful. Would love to hear what's going on for you in your business. Drop a comment below if any of this resonates with you, if you've noticed this kind of shift for you in your business as well, or if this is something that you'd like to try out. Let me know, send me a DM. I'd love to talk to you about that more. All right, bye.